Hello there. Welcome to my thought for the day. We're looking at the last part of the story of, I'd like to call it the story of the loving father rather than the lost son, or perhaps the story of the two sons. The focus has always been on the lost son, rightly so, really, because it's in this chapter with two other stories of lost things, lost sheep and lost coin. But here, this son has come back and been restored that was lost. But at the end of the story, Jesus talks about the elder son, and he is obviously, very obviously, blatantly referring to those self-righteous Jewish people who felt that they had a right to God's love, and that God would be wrong to welcome the wayward who had not followed him, and welcome them, and make such a fuss of them, basically. And when he heard why there was a lot of music, he came in from working in the field. He had been working. He was not an idle son. He had been working for his father, for the good of the farm. At the beginning of the story, the father divided the living between the two sons. So this older son had wherewithal. He had money. He had goods. But he was working in the field. He heard the music and dancing as he came towards the house, and one of the servants told him what it was all about. Your brother has come. Your father has killed the fatted calf, because he's received him safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. He didn't go and join the party. And his reason is quite clear. But as we look at his words to his father, when the father said, your brother has come, and the father came out and talked with him, pleaded with him to come in. The father cares as much for the self-righteous son as he does for the wayward son. Because he reached out to his wayward son did not mean that he loved the older son less. No, he didn't. And sometimes it can feel as if there's a huge fuss made over people who've led terrible lives. I remember there seemed to be a phase of this, I don't know when it was, well, probably in the 1990s, probably, when there seemed to be the prodigal son season, when lots and lots of people who had, some of them had even been followers of Jesus and got involved in the drug scene or whatever, wandered away and came back. And these people, when they were restored, they were always the ones up on the platform giving their testimony of how terrible they had been and how marvellously God had restored them. And there were those, I know there were those, who had always been faithful, who thought, they make such a fuss of these people, but they don't make a fuss of the ones who have been faithful all their lives, who have simply lived for Jesus. But there's no excitement in that. If you get up on the platform and you say, all my life I've served the Lord, and it's been such a blessing to me, it doesn't have the impact, does it, of standing up and saying, well, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other, and God pursued me and saved me. And there can be a resentment, you know. There can be a resentment against those who have fallen heavily from grace, sinned terribly, and then been restored. There can be a resentment. There can be they need to earn their stripes again. They need to prove that they are truly repentant before I will rejoice over them. Well, this poor son, the father came out, and that was his expression of love to his son, and entreated him. But the answer he gave to his father was, lo, these many years I have served you. Now compare this with the other son, the son who came back and said, could I be a servant? I don't deserve to be your son after what I've done, but I could be a servant. I could actually have enough food to eat and somewhere to sleep. He saw himself as demoted to be a servant, and the father refused. This son felt he had already been living a life of servitude. He had, for these many years I have served you, and I've never disobeyed you. I've always done what I've been told, and you've never celebrated over me. I'm more like a servant than a son. And he'd got it wrong the other way. He didn't appreciate that service. There's a phrase in an Anglican prayer. I can't remember any of the rest of the prayer, but we used to pray it quite often when I was a child. There's a phrase that said, whose service, talking about God, whose service is perfect freedom. And it is true that there is more freedom, it's perfect freedom, in serving God. There's great joy, but it is possible to become resentful and feel as if all you've done is keep your nose to the grindstone with the things that the Lord has given you to do, and you've never had fun and never had a party. But God's not like this. See, we're misjudging God the other way. There is great inner satisfaction and joy in doing the will of God, of the Father. Jesus himself said when he was talking to the Samaritan woman that he had meat to eat that they had no knowledge of, that there was a great joy for him in sharing the truth with that woman and with the people she brought to him. All these years I've served you, I've never disobeyed you, and you've never given me the chance to have a party. But when this son of yours, not this brother of mine, but this son of yours, almost disowning any relationship with the brother, when he comes home after all he's done to you, you celebrate over him. It's not fair. You can hear him petulantly saying, it's not fair. Oh dear. Oh dear. And the father says, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to make Marion be glad. For this your brother was dead and is alive, and was lost and is found. God sees things from a different point of view to us. And we need to be careful not to let resentment and bitterness and a feeling of unfairness about the way things work out get into our relationship with God. We need to bask in the joy of being a son of God, in the joy of being in relationship with the Father, and know that even though the Father is watching out and looking earnestly for those that are lost, he has not forgotten those that are already found. He cares for them, just like the shepherd who sought the lost sheep still cared for the rest of the sheep. When he brought that sheep home, he would have seen that every one of them was fed and watered. He had not abandoned the rest of the sheep for the sake of the lost one. They were still his responsibility. And so with this son, both sons were equally valued by the Father, but their difficulties were different. I'm out of time. My goodness, the time has flown as I've been thinking about this older brother. Have a great day. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.